I've heard people say that families are messy, but they mean well. Whoever came up with that clearly didn't grow up in mine. In my family, mess wasn't an accident, it was a currency. And meaning well was just the excuse people used to explain away cruelty. Especially when that cruelty came wrapped in birthday balloons, graduation banners, or 1,000 little choices no one talked about, but everyone felt. I was the oldest daughter, which in my house meant I was the scapegoat, the built-in babysitter, the collateral damage to whatever phase my younger sister, Emily, happened to be going through that year. She was the golden child, the spirited one, the kid whose tantrums were creative expression, whose skipped classes were teenage rebellion, and whose massive sense of entitlement was just confidence. Meanwhile, I was the one who had to be mature, responsible, invisible. It started early. I was 7 when I got a perfect attendance award at school. I was proud beaming, even. I walked home clutching the certificate like it was made of gold foil. My mom barely glanced at it. "That's nice, sweetie," she said, setting it aside while she tried to help Emily find her glitter markers. Emily was 4 and had drawn what she swore was a unicorn vomiting rainbows onto a castle. My mom taped it to the fridge with a magnet that said, "World's Best Mom." My attendance certificate ended up in a kitchen drawer, the one where old batteries and broken pens went to die. That drawer was my emotional metaphor for years. When Emily and I got older, things only escalated. She was stunning, genuinely beautiful in the way teen dramas try to portray. Big eyes, loud laugh, waist-length hair that somehow never looked oily no matter how infrequently she washed it. Boys fell for her like dominoes. Girls followed her on Instagram just to hate her in private group chats. She loved the attention, she lived on it, and my parents fed it to her like it was oxygen. She failed her driver's test 3 times. They blamed the instructor. I passed mine on the first try? Well, you're always so uptight. That's why you don't make friends as easily. She skipped curfew to party with older guys. She's just figuring herself out. I came home 5 minutes late after studying. We expect better from you. That sentence became the chorus of my teenage years. Still, I tried. I studied hard. I joined debate club, yearbook, mock trial. I kept my head down and my grades up. I worked a part-time job to save for college because I didn't assume they'd pay for me, not the way they talked about Emily's future. "She's got big dreams," my mom would say proudly. "We want to help her get there." Once I asked what they thought my dreams were, my dad actually laughed. "You're so practical. You'll be fine no matter what." That was the moment I realized fine meant on your own. When Emily got into her dream school, a liberal arts college with a tuition price that could finance a decent used car dealership, my parents threw her a party. There were banners, custom cupcakes, even party favors with the college logo. They bought her matching dorm decor in coordinating pastel shades and took her on a pre-orientation shopping weekend that cost more than what I had saved in my college fund. When I got accepted into a solid state university with a scholarship, they said, "That's great, honey," and asked if I could carpool to move in day to save gas money. It hurt. But I swallowed it. Swallowed it like every other injustice I wasn't allowed to name. I moved out, got my degree, found a job. Not a glamorous one, but it paid the bills and didn't make me hate myself. I built my life slowly, like laying bricks with bare hands, bleeding, blistering, but methodical. Meanwhile, Emily bounced from internship to influencer phase to taking time to discover herself in Bali. My parents funded every detour like it was noble. Like it was her divine right to wander while I was supposed to be the cautionary tale who stayed still and kept the lights on. So when she called to say she was getting married, I honestly wasn't surprised. Of course she was. Of course she'd found someone who thought her chaos was charming. Of course he proposed with a drone, delivered engagement ring on a beach in Tulum. Of course my parents said it was meant to be. What surprised me was that she invited me to lunch to talk wedding stuff. I was cautious but curious. Maybe she was trying to grow up. Maybe this was her reaching out. We met at a downtown cafe she picked because the lattes are aesthetic. She wore a white sundress and no bra, her hair in beachy waves I knew took an hour to style. I wore slacks and a blouse that had seen 3 interviews and 1 breakup. She hugged me like she'd just come back from a sabbatical. We ordered. She talked. I listened. She told me about the dress, the venue, the bridesmaids, the playlist, the seating chart, the flower girls, the color palette. I waited, and then she said it. So we're doing a small bridal party. Really curated, intimate, you know? I nodded. And I talked to Mom and Dad and we kind of had a family meeting. I stopped stirring my coffee. And we all sort of feel like maybe it would be best if you didn't come. I blinked. To the wedding? I asked, voice steady but colder than I expected. She winced. It's just, you're kind of intense. And you don't really get along with a lot of people, and this is supposed to be joyful. We don't want drama. I didn't know I caused drama. She gave a tight smile. We just want positive energy. That night, I got a call from my mom. No apology, no reconsideration. Just this. We took a family vote. Everyone agreed. It's better if you don't come. Please don't make this about you. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I thanked her for her honesty. Then I hung up. Then I poured a glass of wine, sat down at my laptop, and opened a blank document. At the top I typed, "They voted me out." Let's see what happens when I vote myself back in. I didn't set out to become someone impressive. I just didn't want to feel worthless anymore. After the phone call where my mother told me, with the calm clarity of someone confirming a dinner reservation, that my entire family voted me out of Emily's wedding, I sat in my apartment and stared at nothing for a long time. Then I got up, brushed my teeth, folded a blanket, washed a dish, and went to work. Because when you grow up invisible, you don't collapse. You persist. And sometimes when enough persistence stacks up, people start to notice, even if they never did before. My life didn't change all at once. There was no lottery win, no viral video, no secret millionaire discovery. There was just work, and small wins, and finally, space. The kind of mental space that opens up when you no longer waste time trying to make people love you. The day after the call, I removed my mother's number from my favorites. I didn't block her. I wasn't angry, not exactly. But I was done giving people who didn't choose me the power to affect my peace. My boss at the firm, a brittle woman named Leslie with a steel blade mind and an espresso addiction, noticed something different about me that week. "You're unusually focused," she said one afternoon, looking at the stack of files I'd processed ahead of deadline. "Just trying to be useful," I replied. She nodded. "Good. Keep doing that. I'm putting your name on the next case brief." That case brief turned into a lead. That lead turned into a pitch. That pitch turned into a win. By the end of the month, I was promoted. Meanwhile, Emily's wedding planning turned into a social media saga. She posted everything. The ring, the dress, the engagement shoot with doves in a rented vintage car. There were Q&A boxes on Instagram stories, countdown widgets, and perfectly timed surprise photos her fiancé clearly didn't know were being taken. I watched from a burner account. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to know the terrain I'd be walking into. Because I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to crash her wedding. No. I was going to rewrite its next. "I don't like how things ended between you and your mother. Can we talk?" I didn't answer. The next day I got another text. "Your sister asked if you could still contribute to the honeymoon fund." "Up to you, just asking." I stared at that message so long my screen dimmed. Then I took a screenshot. Then I sent it to myself with the subject line, "Evidence for later." You see, I wasn't just planning a petty stunt. I was building a case. Every manipulative message, every just wondering email, Every time someone pretended I hadn't been erased from my own family tree, I documented all of it. Because someday, I was going to show the world what it looked like when a woman stopped playing the villain they wrote for her and started writing her own part. My old friend Bree came back into my life around this time. We'd lost touch after college, but she reached out after seeing my name on a company legal bulletin. "You're killing it," she said over coffee. "You're alive," I joked back. We talked, we laughed, and I told her, carefully, calmly, about what had happened. She didn't gasp or look shocked. She just said, "You know what would be wild? If you controlled the entire wedding narrative without ever showing up." I blinked. "Go on." And that's how the plan began. First, the vendors. Bree was in PR, but she used to do wedding planning for high-end clients. She still had contacts. And I had the money now. We quietly bought out the photographer Emily was using, doubled their rate to reschedule. Then the florist offered a bulk deal on another event. Then the transportation service, a better client needed the cars that day. Every time Emily cried online, she framed it as bad luck. She never once imagined that maybe karma had a lawyer and an expense account. Next, the seating chart. Emily was using an online RSVP system. It synced to a wedding website. With a little help from Bree and a fake persona, we offered to optimize her guest flow with a plugin. It was basic UX stuff. It also gave us back-end access. We didn't change the main list. We changed the backup, switched names, adjusted table numbers, moved her favorite cousin next to her ex, replaced her fiancé's childhood friend with a woman he once ghosted. We didn't sabotage. We simply shuffled things around. The chaos would unfold itself. Meanwhile, I went silent. Not a word to my parents. Not a comment online. Not a text of protest. Because silence unnerves the guilty. And I wanted them rattled. The final piece came 2 weeks before the wedding. Bree and I rented a small digital billboard, just one, across the street from the venue. It was legally tied to my name, but the content? Just a quote. In elegant serif font on a white background. We took a family vote. "You're not welcome at the wedding." My mom. 3 months before. No other text. No photo. No context. Just the words. And a wedding date. The morning it went live, Emily had a breakdown. Not just online, but full, real, world, tears, screaming at the venue, claiming defamation, legal threats. But she didn't know who to sue. Because the truth doesn't come with a return address. And I was in another city by then, drinking wine, booking a weekend retreat, planning the next chapter. Because the best revenge isn't just watching them crumble, it's knowing they did it to themselves. And you didn't have to lift a finger. After lifting yourself, planning revenge is a strange kind of therapy. You tell yourself you're not angry, you're just being thorough. You convince yourself it's not petty, it's strategic. Not malicious, just meticulous. But the truth? It's all of those things. And when it's deserved, it feels like justice dressed in elegance. I didn't want to humiliate my sister. I didn't want to destroy my family. I just wanted the truth to echo in the places they thought I could never reach. Once the wedding invitations had gone out, my work truly began. Thanks to the RSVPs syncing with that beautifully minimalist wedding website Emily was so proud of, I had a live feed of her guest list in my hands, along with access to emails, seating preferences, and dietary restrictions. All I had to do was create a parallel one. I called it the real guest list. Mine wasn't based on blood. It was based on memory. I thought back to every person I'd watched fade into the shadows because of my family. The aunt who divorced her husband and got blacklisted from reunions. The cousin who came out and was never mentioned again. The friend of my mother's who used to braid my hair when I was little and disappeared after one inappropriate political post. I found them, one by one, and I invited them. Not to Emily's wedding, to mine. Let me explain. While Emily's wedding was being held at an exclusive vineyard 2 hours outside the city, I quietly rented the inn across the street. Same date. Same time. Half the guests, the ones who never received official invites, I redirected to my space. They didn't ask questions. Most of them hadn't heard from our family in years. Getting a warm, handwritten note saying, "You've been remembered," was all they needed. And when they saw who it came from, they cried. The other half of my real guest list, people my family actively tried to forget. Old teachers, past neighbors, one of Emily's ex-friends who she backstabbed senior year and still carried the receipt. I gathered them like puzzle pieces, and in the center of the table sat the quote, "We took a family vote. You're not welcome at the wedding." That was our toast. Meanwhile, Emily was busy preparing for the most aesthetic day of her life. Her posts got glossier. Her captions got longer. Her guest list got tighter. And her trust in me, or rather, the absence of me, meant she never saw it coming. But I wasn't just collecting people. I was collecting stories. I interviewed every one of my guests, asked how they knew us, what went wrong, what they were never allowed to say. We recorded it, cut it into a tight 9-minute reel, and gave it a title, "The Other Side of the Vote." You see, Emily wanted a love story, and I was going to give her one, just not the kind she expected. The week before the wedding, my mother messaged me. No apology, just this. "We need your email to finalize the seating chart in case we want to send post-event family photos." I stared at it, and I smiled, because for the first time, I realized something. They still didn't get it. They still thought I was hurt, still thought I was waiting. They didn't understand I'd moved on from needing a chair at their table, because I was building my own banquet hall next door. The day before the wedding, I dressed simply. Cream blouse, jeans, hair in a braid, no drama. But I walked into the florist's back room and handed them a USB drive. On it was the exact playlist for the alternative event happening across the street. Same tone, same tracks, slightly better cuts. Emily's perfect wedding would now echo in competition with its shadow. A little louder, a little richer, a little more real. I didn't crash her wedding. I never stepped foot on the property. But I did watch from the window, as several guests got confused and walked into my event by mistake. As the best man realized his date was across the street because his invite had been rerouted. As Emily's old piano teacher gave a speech on my mic about what it meant to be left behind and finally seen again. And then, right before sunset, the screen went up. The 9-minute reel played. No slander, just voices, faces, people, telling the truth. And Emily? She didn't even know it existed until the guests who wandered back to her side started asking questions. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Not because I had destroyed anything, but because I had finally built something that mattered. The morning of the wedding was quiet. Not calm quiet, the kind of silence that buzzes with anticipation, like the air before a storm. I woke early, made coffee, and watched the sky lighten outside my window. Across town, Emily was likely being pampered, powdered, polished. Everything she had planned for months was finally unfolding. Every flower, every plate, every sparkle. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that today wasn't just her big day. It was mine too. Because while she was preparing for a performance, I was preparing the truth. And the truth always arrives uninvited but right on time. I arrived at the inn around 9 a.m. across the road from the venue. My version of wedding day prep didn't involve makeup artists or curling irons. It involved a laptop, a microphone, and a production team that knew how to keep their mouths shut. Bree met me in the small suite we'd booked out for the day. "You ready for this?" she asked, handing me a black envelope. I opened it. Inside was a printout, the final guest list from Emily's wedding, annotated, circled, sorted. "Everyone's in place?" I asked. She nodded. "The ones who matter, and the ones who'll talk." I sipped my tea. Let's give them something to talk about. Across the street, the wedding prep was in full swing. Through the high windows, I could see a flurry of blush, colored dresses, champagne flutes, and a lot of artificial smiles. A live band was doing sound check under a floral arch. Someone dropped a tray of mini quiches. Laughter covered the panic. It was beautiful, I'll admit. But beauty is nothing when it's built on rot. At 11:42 a.m., the first disruption hit. Emily's makeup artist showed up at the wrong venue. We had booked her a sister event at a nearby vineyard, claiming to be a pop-up bridal shoot for a magazine. She didn't realize her mistake until someone called her, sobbing. By then, she was on her second mimosa and didn't feel like rushing back. At 12:17, the seating chart was reset. 2 junior event staffers accidentally uploaded the version Bree and I had created. Suddenly, X's were side by side. And I thought this was gluten-free. Why are there photographers outside? Ah yes, the photographers. We hired 4, dressed like regular guests, carrying nothing but their cameras and a handful of questions. "Do you think the bride and her sister are close? Were you at the rehearsal dinner last night? Did you know the maid of honor used to date the groom?" They weren't invasive. They were curious. But curiosity, when multiplied, becomes doubt. At 2:30, the projector screen dropped. It wasn't scheduled. That was the first clue something had gone wrong. The second clue was the black screen that followed. No wedding slideshow, no baby photos of the happy couple. Just a white serif font on a dark background. "We took a family vote. You're not welcome at the wedding. My mom 3 months ago." A pause. Then a soft fade. Then the video. It wasn't dramatic. There were no jump cuts, no screaming. Just faces. One by one. People Emily knew. People she didn't. People she'd hurt, ignored, forgotten. They spoke calmly. I was told I wasn't positive enough to attend. They said it was not my place. She never thanked me for helping raise her when her parents couldn't. They invited everyone but me. I found out on Facebook. Then, a long pause. Then my voice. I didn't appear on screen. Just my voice, quiet, steady. "My name is Claire. I'm the bride's sister. I wasn't invited to this wedding. Not because I ruined anything, but because I didn't fit the image. So I created something else. Not to steal the spotlight, but to share the truth. Today, I'm not here to protest. I'm not here to shame. I'm here to let the people who've been erased be remembered. This isn't a sabotage. This is a reckoning." The screen faded to black, then cut to a live feed. From across the street. That's when people began leaving. Not all, but enough. Some out of discomfort. Some out of curiosity. Some, God bless them, out of principle. Emily was mid-toast when she noticed. She tried to joke about it. "Guess everyone's chasing the wine next door." But her voice cracked. The microphone picked it up. And that crack? It was the beginning of the landslide. By 3:30, her groom's father confronted my dad. Voices were raised. By 4 o'clock, the photographer left. He'd been on our payroll for weeks. By 4:12, Emily was crying in the bridal suite, asking why no one had told her Claire was doing something. My mom? She sat, frozen, watching the aftermath with a glass of white wine and the expression of someone realizing finally that silence doesn't make the consequences go away. I never showed up. I didn't need to. I wasn't the villain. And I wasn't the victim. I was the author. That night, I hosted a dinner at the inn. Not a celebration. Just a table. Real food. Real people. Real conversation. We toasted to resilience. To boundaries. To finally being seen. And when someone asked, "What now?" I said, "Now we live without apology. Without their permission." The morning after the wedding, I woke up to a dozen missed calls, 3 voicemails, and more text messages than I'd received on my last birthday. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years, classmates, former coworkers, even distant cousins. Most said the same thing. "I saw what happened." At first, I didn't know what they meant. I hadn't posted anything. But the video, the one we screened at the inn, had been shared. Someone had filmed it on their phone, then posted it with the caption, "She wasn't invited to the wedding." So she threw the truth across the street. By the time I opened my laptop, it had over 100,000 views. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or log off forever. But the strange thing was, I felt okay. No panic, no regret, just the steady pulse of release. It was out now. The truth was out, and they couldn't vote it away. Later that afternoon, my mother called. I didn't pick up. A few minutes later, she sent a text. "We need to talk. You've gone too far." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Emily messaged me 2 days later. A voice memo. "I don't even know what you think you proved. All you did was embarrass me. And you couldn't just let me have my day? You had to ruin it for everyone? Why are you always so bitter, Claire? Why can't you just move on?" I didn't reply. Not because I had nothing to say, but because silence, at that point, was louder. By the end of the week, several major wedding blogs had picked up this story. Buzzwords like sister's revenge, emotional sabotage, and truth bomb were thrown around like confetti. Some supported me. Some criticized me. But most importantly, they saw me. For the first time, I wasn't the side character in my own story. I took a few weeks off work. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I wanted to think. Revenge is a powerful drug, but it's not nourishment. You have to know when to put it down. One afternoon, Bree and I were sitting on my apartment balcony, drinking iced coffee and watching a storm roll in. She turned to me and asked, "Do you feel better?" I nodded. "Yeah, but not because I got even." She raised an eyebrow. "Then why?" I thought for a moment. "Because I'm finally done asking them to choose me." My father eventually reached out too. This time with more sincerity. "I didn't realize how deep this ran. I failed you. I see that now. If you're ever open to a conversation, I'm here." I sat with that one for days. Then replied simply, "Maybe someday, but not yet." People always expect a neat ending. Forgiveness, reconciliation, hugs under golden light. But life isn't a Hallmark movie. Sometimes, closure isn't a reunion. It's a boundary, a closed door, a life rebuilt on your own terms. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. The theme was Reclaiming the Narrative. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of strangers and for the first time told the story without rage, without shame. Just truth. And when I finished, I said, they took a vote to push me out of their lives. So I cast my own vote. And I voted for myself. That's all I ever needed. The room went silent. Then applause. Not for the drama, but for the clarity. Today, I still don't speak to my mother. Emily and her husband separated after 5 months. Apparently, he didn't like the attention. My dad and I exchange emails occasionally. Nothing deep, but honest. And me? I live a quiet life. I cook. I write. I travel. Sometimes I meet someone and tell them the story. Not out of bitterness, but because sometimes the best revenge story is the one where you stop needing revenge at all.